This video is now in session, and Florida. Florida is one of those confusing states that you really don't know what they're going to do. And politically speaking, Florida is a very confusing state to look at. It has a racially diverse coalition of different types of Latino Americans. Some from Central America, well, a few from Central America, but most from South America. A lot from the Caribbean, and of those, there are a lot of different demographics: Cuban American, Venezuelan American, Brazilian American, and Chilean American, Argentinian American, and then you also have Central American. You can be Puerto Rican. You can also be from, I already said Cuba, but you can also be from Trinidad and Tobago. You can be from Antigua. And there's simply a lot of different types of demographics that all combine to create Florida. There's also white Americans who retired from the Rust Belt, and then Black Americans located in Florida. So there are a lot of groups in Florida, and what makes this state special is that it's voted more Republican compared to the 2016 election. If we look at the 2020 election, Trump won it by 3.4 percentage points, but in the 2016 election, he won it by less than 1%, which meant that he had a jump of 2.2 percentage points. That's better than any other state besides Utah for the Trump presidency. There are a few other states that went more Republican, but Utah was the only one that went more Republican. And that's because in the 2016 election, there was a third-party candidate that ran in Utah and was pretty popular among people of Utah, which was why Donald Trump was able to gain 2.4 percentage points. But Florida is the main state that we're talking about. And you might think that it's a very democratic place. It has a lot of racial demographics, and it's pretty liberal. If we look at the ballot initiatives in Florida, let's go to Florida right here. They put up multiple ballot initiatives, and a lot of them are liberal. So here, clarify that only a citizen may vote. That's a pretty bipartisan thing. Raise the minimum wage. So this would raise it from $8.56 in 2020 to $15 in 2026. And this gets a 61% approval, which is a very high approval compared to a no, which is 39%. When this policy is very, very favored for progressives. Progressives go for this kind of amendment. But these kinds of policies are not being implemented by Republicans, yet Republicans are constantly voted into Florida. So what explains all of this? Ultimately, it comes down to campaigning, because while policies might favor Democrats, campaigning, currently speaking in Florida, favors Republicans. In the 2020 election, Democrats put a crush on themselves by not being able to go door to door to canvass with voters. Meanwhile, Republicans kept doing that throughout the entire pandemic, and while it might have raised some ethical concerns, ultimately it gave Republicans more votes. It registered more Republicans, and now the lead that Democrats had in registering voters from for themselves in Florida has been narrowing up compared to Republicans. Democrats still have more registered voters in Florida than Republicans, but Republicans are catching up, and that is not good for Democrats. The thing is, Democrats built a lot of this infrastructure in the 2008 election when Barack Obama was elected president, and in Florida, he won Florida by a resounding margin. If we refresh this and go over to past elections and go to 2008, he won by 2.8%. Now, this was compared to George W. Bush winning this election by 5 points in the 2004 election. So you can see here that this democratic shift that happened in the 2008 election showed that Florida was potentially going to go Democratic, but ever since 2008, it's just been coming more and more Republican. You can see it went from a lean Democratic to tilt Democratic, from tilt to tilt Republican, or not even tilt Republican, but just above tilt Republican, and then it stayed as lean Republican through 2020. So you can see that this shift has been happening ever since 2008, and that is a worrying sign for Democrats, because Florida is bound to gain more electoral votes. Florida is becoming popular among every American, and currently it has 29 electoral votes, but soon it will have 30. And in future decades, we could see it have up to 40 if Florida continues to grow at this pace. So it's important for Democrats to still focus on the state. It's not like a state like Ohio where it's losing electoral votes. It's a state that's gaining in electoral votes and gaining presence in the House of Representatives. So for the Democrats, they have a lot to do. The first thing is they have to be able to go against the Republican campaigning machine in Florida. Currently, Republicans have created a great campaign in Florida. They've been able to not only register a lot of voters, but have been able to shoot down a lot of Democratic nominees. In the 2018 election, a Democratic wave year, Rick Scott won against Bill Nelson, and Bill Nelson was the incumbent Democrat of the Florida Senate election. He was an incumbent, meaning that he has an advantage, and Rick Scott was able to win in this election. For the governor's races, we can see that Ron DeSantis won against Andrew Gillum, the Democratic challenger, by 0.4 percentage points. Now, this was in the same year that Kansas went for Democrats. It was the same year that multiple gubernatorial positions flipped for Democrats, including Scott Walker's seat in Wisconsin. So, for Democrats, they have to start recanvassing now, and they have to start building their own infrastructure that they haven't really built on in a fundamental way since 2008. And if they're able to do that, at the very earliest, 2022 is when they can show that they've proven themselves, that they've redeemed themselves. It's unlikely to be the 2022 election, even though there are a lot of key races up for re-election in Florida. There's the Marco Rubio seat in 2022, and then there's also Florida's gubernatorial election. So that is Ron DeSantis' governor's mansion, who will be up for re-election. So those will be the first two tests of the Democratic Party. It's probably a little bit too early for the Democrats, but they can continue it on through 2024, because this race that was up in the 2018 election, or not this race, but this race that was up for the 2018 election will be up in 2024, and that's when Democrats can prove themselves that they have actually started to regain in Florida. And we'll see if they actually do that. First, they have to be able to build out an infrastructure. The second thing they have to do is outline their policies, and the most important thing is for them to counteract Republicans' rhetoric on the Democratic Party, because Donald Trump experimented with something new in the 2020 election, which is calling Democrats socialist. He experimented with the idea of calling Democrats radicals and way too progressive of a party, and he called Joe Biden and Kamala Harris the most progressive duo in U.S. history. Well, he didn't call exactly that, but I mean, it's kind of the same sentiments. And that experiment worked in the 2020 election, where we saw, and as well as in the 2018 election, where we saw Republicans flip a lot of these seats in Florida from Republican to Democrat. Now, in terms of statewide races, there's only one statewide seat, which is the agricultural commissioner, who went for Democrats. Every other seat, besides the Florida Commissioner of Agriculture, went for Republicans. The AG position, all the secretary positions, and as well as the governor's positions, and the two Republican seats from Florida, and the congressional delegation from Florida, the state legislatures, so the state legislatures, so the state house, and as well as the state senate, they're all Republican. So Democrats have to do a lot of reflecting here, and they're definitely going to do a lot of reflecting. It's difficult for Democrats to win in Florida, because there's so many different types of groups that Democrats have to tie together into one election. They have to tie Black Americans, they have to tie Puerto Rican Americans, they have to tie up a lot of Southern Americans, Caribbean Americans that are not Venezuelan or Cuban Americans. Meanwhile, the Republicans really only need to get the Cuban American vote, the Venezuelan American vote, and then part of the Puerto Rican vote, and then the white vote. That's all they need. They don't need any other kind of demographic in order to win in Florida. So Democrats are definitely stacked with different kinds of viewpoints to try to combine, but we've seen Democrats win in Florida before, And if Democrats are as smart about Florida as they are about Georgia or Arizona or even Nevada with the Harry Reid machine, then we could potentially see an election where Democrats start to regain on Florida, because currently the GOP is centered around Florida. Everything about the GOP is in Florida, but that could change very soon. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.